Let's understand, as we have already learned the table which says, depending upon where we live, we have that kind of respiratory organ. So as we being mammals, we are living on terrestrial region, so we have specialized organ for exchange of gases, that is lungs, right? So lungs, to understand lungs, we have to understand there are certain parts, and this whole system is called as human respiratory system, which is responsible for providing oxygen to every cell of our body, right? So if you are all on page 154, it will be easy for you to underline whatever has been told to you. So we'll divide this human respiratory system into two parts. One is the upper respiratory system, another would be lower respiratory system. So we'll just have a glance what all things will be in upper. Let's see this diagram. When you see here the nasal cavity, nostril, mouth, pharynx, this will be the upper respiratory system, the upper part of the respiratory system. The respiratory system is the total, right? So this one was the upper. Let's just repeat it once again. This is your respiratory system divided into upper and lower. So this part is the upper respiratory system and this part is the lower respiratory system. So the upper respiratory system end till pharynx. तो इसके अंदर आता क्या है आपके external nares, आपके जो nose है, so you have, we'll just see that part. So here we have to underline it, the upper, external nares, then the nasal cavity, internal nares, nasopharynx. You have oropharynx also quite near to it, nose, throat, and some of the structures related with it. Then the lower respiratory has started from larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and at the end, lungs. And inside the lungs, you have balloon-like structure called alveoli. Okay, alveolus. Now, when you talk about what exactly is the function of this human respiratory system, what do? They are responsible for inspiration. That means gas is taken in. Expiration, gas is taken out. Exchange of gases. So basically what are we doing through this respiratory system? We are doing exchange inside our body. We cannot exchange like other organisms. They've been exchanging through moist skin. They've been exchanging through the plasma membrane from the environment directly. We cannot do like that, as we are like considered as organism living on terrestrial. We have a specialized structure in our body called as lungs, which is always filled with air in it. Now let's start with different components of human respiratory system. The first component of upper respiratory tract is the nose. So basically nose is what? It's a slit or an opening, and whatever is visible to you, that's the external nares. जो आपको दिख रहे हैं वो है आपका external nares, or we call it as two place, or we can say two holes that makes the entry of air easy. It's called as nostrils. Okay? And when you observe the nostril, what do you find them in? You have hairs, you have mucus, special cell lining that helps in understanding the smell, right? So how many nostrils do you have? You have two nostrils. You can say that's the left side and right side. That's categorized as nasal chamber. So the cavity is divided into left side and right side, and in दोनों को जो divide करता है, that is the mesenteroid cartilage. जो बीच की जो cartilage है जो left और right को divide करता है, that's called mesenteroid cartilage. So we'll understand part by part nose के अलग अलग specific areas. Nose is divided, or the nasal chamber is divided into three main parts. First is the vestibule. Vestibule में है क्या? Let's underline it over here. What do you have in vestibule? When it is visible to you, when you look in the mirror, you find hair. So there is hair in the vestibule region. So आपके नाक में जहाँ hairy region है, you call that region as vestibule. Now what is the purpose of this hair? It is to filter the air and trap the dust and suspendical particles in the air that we are breathing in. जो हम सांस ले रहे हैं उसके अंदर अगर मिट्टी है, डस्ट है, unwanted things are there, that will be trapped and stopped. So hair is acting like a curtain. It is not allowing the unnecessary things. It is only allowing the filtered air. It's a kind of filter. So what do the vestibule have? They have hairs. Second part is respiratory part. That is, if you use a torch and see, next to that would be vascular region. You know, vascular region means a place which has lot of small capillaries. Capillaries means lot of blood. Lot of blood means it is going to provide warmth. अब अगर हवा ठंडी है, ठंडी हवा lungs में गया तो problem है. So that air, whatever you're breathing in, has to be warmed. अगर उसके अंदर moisture content भी कम है तो उसको moisturize भी करता है because of the mucus, right? So it has to be. What is the purpose of the next part? Respiratory conditioner part. That is the warming एंड मॉइस्चरिंग का इफेक्ट देता है. जो एयर हम ब्रीथ करते हैं उसको वो वार्म करता है, उसका टेम्परेचर हमारे बॉडी टेम्परेचर के साथ मैच कराता है, वार्म करता है. नंबर 2, इट मॉइस्चर्स द, इफ देयर इज लेस ऑफ वाटर कंटेंट, दैट मॉइस्चर कंटेंट इज एडेड टू दिस एयर विच वी ब्रीद इन, राइट? सो द थर्ड पार्ट इज द olfactory chamber, which is attached to the cranial nerve. That's called olfactory nerve. That's part in chapter 9, which is responsible for the smell which you obtain from the surrounding. So remember, your nasal chamber is divided into vestibule with hair that brings in the trapping of dust and unnecessary things. Then number 2, conditioner respiratory part, the inner part which is highly vascular, मतलब बहुत सारी capillaries हैं, वो क्या करती है, warmth provide करती है and moisten करती है inhaled air को. And the third part is the olfactory or the sensory chamber, responsible for collecting the smell, sensing the smell around the place where we are, right? So detection of smell. The next component is our pharynx. When you talk about pharynx, pharynx is divided into 3 main sections. One is nasopharynx, मतलब जो नाक के पास होगा. Let's see the diagram first, okay? ये जो diagram है इसको हम highlight करते हैं. Okay, only this much, it is growing big. Okay, this entire region is pharynx. So nasal region के पास वाले pharynx को हम बोलेंगे nasopharynx, okay? और माउथ के पास वाला नेक्स्ट रीजन, आई विल चेंज द कलर. नेक्स्ट माउथ के पास वाला है उसको हम बोलेंगे ओरोफैरिंग्स. देन माउथ के जो नीचे का रीजन है लैरिंग्स के पास वाला, ये लैरिंग्स का रीजन है ना, तो इसके पास वाले को हम बोलेंगे लैरिंजियो और लैरिंजियोफैरिंग्स. So pharynx is divided into 3 depending upon the position. Nose के पास है तो nasopharynx, mouth के पास है we call it as oropharynx, and near the larynx you call it as, you can underline it in your textbook, naso, oro, and the third one is laryngopharynx. Okay, so pharynx has a very special part or organ that's called the tonsil, जो बीच बीच में ख़राब हो जाता है ना, आपको बताता है कि आपने infection cataract किया. You have actually got some infection. Tonsil is a lymphoid organ. मतलब lymph का बना है ये. It's an organ that's producing lymph, and it is basically for showing you it's actually responsible for your immunity. Okay, so if you have some kind of infection, the tonsil swells. हम तो basically बोल देते हैं tonsillitis हुआ है, tonsil हुआ है. Why did that happen? Because there is some kind of infection inside the body, right? So just to fight with those pathogens, tonsil swells because of the fight. So that causes tonsillitis. Okay, we are not getting into tonsillitis right now. Let's understand through a small video. Once the air enters inside the lungs, you know, lungs has a very specific structure. There is sac-like structure. You call this sac-like structure alveoli, जो कि extreme end में होता है. ये alveoli is always, this alveoli is always surrounded by network of capillaries. ये network of capillaries में होता क्या है? 11th में हमने पढ़ा था हमारे जो processes होते हैं जो कि कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड प्रोड्यूस करते हैं. You remember? One was Krebs cycle. We were producing carbon dioxide, and another was ETC, and we were, whatever was produced in that cycle is absorbed by the blood, and when the blood is absorbing, that brings that deoxygenated blood. तो मतलब इस oxygenated blood के अंदर में से ऑक्सीजन कम होता है क्योंकि वो सेल यूज़ कर लेता है. तो यहाँ पे क्या है, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड फिल्ड ब्लड इज देयर दैट इज ब्रॉट टू द लंग्स, एंड फ्रॉम हियर हमने ब्रीथ किया ऑक्सीजन, राइट. दैट ऑक्सीजन इज मोर इनसाइड द एल्वुलाई. तो ऑक्सीजन का कंटेंट एल्वुलाई में ज़्यादा है और कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का कंटेंट यहाँ पे ज़्यादा है. दैट मीन्स in this pulmonary vein that's around the alveoli, इनके अंदर ज़्यादा है. सो कार्बन जहाँ जिस चीज़ का कंटेंट ज़्यादा होता है, like by the simple process wherein diffusion happens. Diffusion, how is the direction of diffusion? यहाँ पे कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड का कंटेंट ज़्यादा था तो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड लंग्स के अंदर जाता है, और लंग्स के अंदर ऑक्सीजन का कंटेंट ज़्यादा था तो वो लंग्स में से इन द capillary the oxygen enters into the capillary. So there is exchange of gases happening inside the lungs. What is happening? Exchange of gases. Carbon dioxide from the blood goes into the lungs. Oxygen from the lungs goes into the blood stream. So this will go back to the body and provides oxygen to every cell of the body, giving us more energy, right? When these linings are destroyed, like in corona, these linings are destroyed, so exchange of gas does not happen and that person feels breathless. So extra oxygen दिया जाता है through the machine they have. So we have understood the upper respiratory tract and little bit about the lower respiratory. We started with the larynx. Larynx is basically what? It is the voice box. You can remember it like this. L for loudspeaker, L for larynx. larynx के ऊपर क्या था? pharynx, right? pharynx के तीन हिस्से थे. naso, oro and laryngopharynx, right? So don't forget that. And inside the larynx, which system, which prevents, or we can say which structure prevents the entry of food into the trachea? That is the epiglottis.